Welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Join us here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first. After 30 years in a K-12 Arizona school system and now a PhD in higher education and university lecturer, Francisco Javier Fuentes has finally fulfilled a longtime dream to publish Las Cosas Diferentes, Things That Are Different, an English-Spanish bilingual book.
I've always wanted to write for children. I started as a bilingual education teacher, and most recently with my PhD and working in the heritage language program in the Spanish department, I talk about, all of our topics are based on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so, we're pretty straightforward in higher ed, right? This is DI and this are the facts and these are the stories. But we don't do that. In fact, I think there's a fear of bringing DEI into the public school system because of, unfortunately, it's got some negative connotations by some people. And what I wanted to do was write a book that communicates language identity and cultural identity and acceptance of diversity, equity, and inclusion into an elementary children's book, bilingual book, without calling it, this is a DEI lesson, this is a story. And
then the story just incorporates diversity without saying the word. Isn't that sad?
Yeah, it's sad, but that's unfortunately where we're at in this world right now. Hopefully it's getting better. But yeah, that's the reason I did it. I wanted to promote social justice in a story that children could understand and educators and families could accept. Wow, that's true. That's a nice little message. And it's a very important message. And so I did it, and I was very pleased with it.
Tell me the story.
The story is about my daughter, my youngest daughter at the time. I put her at 7 years old so the kids in school can connect with her as the protagonist, as the main character. And I use the same concept in college, by the way. That's how I get across this concept. I use the same exact when I talk about my wife's menudo, which is, I don't know what menudo is, but it is a Mexican soup that we eat for breakfast. Very popular.
Okay.
But it's made differently across regions of Mexico. Where we come from, it's white. But in most parts of Mexico, it's spicy red. And so the concept, and I use that concept in my college classrooms. In this case, using it with my daughter, she loved my wife's menudo, which is a fact. She does make the best menudo in the world. So she's used to the menudo. So we went to a restaurant, and at this restaurant, my daughter wanted to have menudo. So she asked the waiter, "Do you have menudo?" He says, "Of course." "Great. So I'll have a bowl of menudo." She says, well, when she got the menudo, it was red. And she tasted it, and it was just too spicy. She didn't like it. And then my wife at that time says, "Remember what I told you, mijita. Things that are different are not better, are not worse. They're just different. And we have to appreciate that somebody else likes this type of menudo." And that's the message of the book. And so from there, it goes into school. And a new student is enrolled, and the student is Fatima, and she's from Saudi Arabia. And she has a hijab as part of her outfit. And so the teacher says, "Welcome, Fatima. Make sure you teach her about the school and are, welcoming to her." And so at recess, all the kids are sitting and watching Fatima, kind of looking at her and, talking. You can tell they're talking about her and her hijab, why she's so different. And of course, my daughter, she's sitting by herself in the playground, Fatima is. My daughter goes over and sits next to her and asks, "Hey, how are you? Nice to meet you. My name is Naima, blah, 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 blah. Tell me about the what you're wearing in your head." And she says, "It's called a hijab, and it's part of my religion and culture." And so Naima then talks to the class for the rest of the students and uses her mom's message. Things that are different are not better, not worse. They're just different, and we have to appreciate that somebody prefers that. And that's what she used to have the kids be more welcoming of her different look. So after that, the kids, talk to her, meet her, get along with her, play soccer together. Everything's hunky-dory. The book ends with the classroom teacher eating a tamal. And the tamal is so spicy that she's just beet red, sweating in the playground. And she bites the tamal and she makes a comment and says, "Oh my God, who would make something so spicy? You can't even eat this." And then, of course, the kids, the classroom kids, and with Naima, "No, teacher, no. Remember, things that are different are not better, are not worse. They're just different." And everybody's laughing, including the teacher. And then she says, "You know what? You're right. You know why? Because I have very smart students."
Oh.
And that's how the story ends.
Oh, that is so sweet. Do you have the opportunity to present this to classes of students?
Yes. Yeah.
How's
Yeah,
that
that's part
going?
of I'm connected with a school district, so I have a principal who bought 10 copies for next year, and he's going to have it a resource. And then I said from there, I can come in and read the story to your students, do a workshop, how to implement the story in the classroom. There isn't much out there. I mean, there is, but nothing compared to what the other stories are. General messages as far as DEI. There are some books out there, but there aren't many.
Yeah. What happens next?
Hopefully it does well. I will be going to bilingual education conferences and promoting my book. I'll also apply to present my book at conferences. And then my plan is to be the first in a series of 5.
Okay.
This one is cultural identity, and the next one is going to be about language identity and the stigma that comes with speaking Spanglish or code switching in this country. And how does that impact the individual and be an education towards family, and to teach them that Spanglish is a rule-governed dialect, just like any other language out there that has different dialects. Spanglish is one too, and it's rule-governed, it's research-based. Not anybody can do it, and promote that, because unfortunately in our Latino families, you have the traditional grandma or mother or father or aunt or uncle who's like, it's either only English or only Spanish. Don't mix them up. We have a negative term for that called pocho, and don't be a pocho. And so my job in that book is to educate family members and kids who speak Spanglish that it's a dialect, and there's nothing wrong with them. It's a form of informal Spanish and English, just like we have informal English on the playground.
Right.
And it's just informal, and it's an informal version of Spanish and English, and it's okay. And there's nothing wrong with how you speak it. In fact, I might end the book by saying something like talking to a grandma and saying, or a grandpa saying, "You tried. Let me teach you some code switching, some Spanglish."
That's great.
Something to that nature. So that's the second one. And it's just in the planning stages right now, but that's what I hope to do.
Sounds like you're onto something you really feel like you're compelled to do.
Yeah, I do enjoy it. The business part of it, the marketing, is a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. I know. A lot. Yeah.
It's your field, and it's exciting, but it is a lot of work.
Well, it's a lot of grassroots stuff too.
Yeah.
And, as long as you're willing, you're presenting your book at conferences, you've got a plan, you're connected to a school district. Whenever I talk to teachers, they kind of have a leg up because they're already in a system where they can promote their book. If they're writing a children's book or any kind of education-based book, they can at least get something started from where they are. It's getting it out beyond that. That's a little more challenging, but not impossible. All right, listen, thank you so much. You have a great day.
Thank you so much. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. With a doctorate in chemistry, Scott R. Frazer was in research and development before he retired. Then he decided to devote more time to his passion for writing. First Judgment is a sci-fi adventure, but not your first published book, right?
So I've got 4 nonfiction books that I wrote that are basically discuss different aspects of science and religion, because I'm interested in both.
Okay.
And science because I'm a chemist, and so I started writing just things that I wanted to leave behind to my children, just thoughts that I'd hoped they would read. And then I realized I wanted my grandchildren to read what I was writing. And so I thought, well, to do all this, I really need to get these, get a book published. So I wrote my first book, Where Science Meets God. And lo and behold, a local publishing company offered to publish it. that was great. I mean, at least my grandchildren, if they want to read my writings, there's a book that they can grab and read. And so I did that. And then I'd had this story bumping around in my head of science fiction. I thought, because I've always loved science fiction. I've loved the fact that it is a great format for talking about the universe and the rules of the universe and deep subjects like that. And so I finally thought, I need to write this down. And it was a relief to actually start writing the book, because once I got the idea written down, then it quit bumping around in my head so hard. It was like, okay, it's written down. And then I could go on to the next part of the story or another story. And so writing kind of snuck up on me. I didn't start until I was in my 50s, early 50s.
Okay.
And like I said, I was just thinking I was going to write something for my kids. And then it went ahead and ended up in books, so which I'm very pleased for.
So you went with a local publisher first, and then you decided to go with Fulton on this book. Why?
Because my local publisher here, they liked my nonfiction books and religious and science and that. But I talked to them about it, and they said, yeah, this isn't really our strong point. So they encouraged me to find another publisher. And so I looked around and decided to go with Fulton. And so here we are today.
Do religion and science both play a role in this book?
So I touch on science, certainly, because it's science fiction. And we have to give these aliens that are coming to visit Earth a means to get here. Okay. And you can't just say, well, they just showed up, warp drive or something from Star Trek. So I explained the science of how I believe that a planet full of people could develop faster than light technology. So the science is there. And then the religion is just touched on. One of the aspects, for example, is that the aliens, when they arrive in their spacecraft and they walk out of the spacecraft for the first time, everybody's kind of disappointed. There's crowds there watching because the aliens look just like us. Okay, there are no woolly mammoths or there's no reptiles. They look just like us and could easily be mistaken for human beings, for Earthlings. And so the reason behind that, and our hero from Parmithia, he gets up and he introduces themselves, and he explains that this doesn't surprise us because we have been to a number of different planets throughout the Milky Way, and more often than not, the advanced species are human. And he says we believe this could only be possible because evolution is going to give you a wider variety than that. It's going to give you, not such similar looking beings. Mm-hmm. And so their conclusion was that there had to be a higher being that was directing the evolutionary path of these different planets to become human. And kind of like in Genesis, that God made Adam in His image, and if God was going to make another planet, He would probably do the same thing and make those people in His image. So I just touch on religion and, the fact that, and they do, so, and there's a couple other times, just talking about religion, just general religion and how that might affect this story.
I think it's interesting that you're kind of making the connection that God may use evolution as a means to create man so that there isn't one or the other.
Right.
Like, what a great idea, God. Why isn't evolution? Why do we always have to separate the two?
Correct. And so as I write also in the nonfiction books, if you can take a God who oversees evolution and, planetary development and combine him with evolution, because there's too much evidence out there to dismiss evolution, just too much. And so if you take them both and say, okay, this is how this is going to work, you can make a much stronger argument for, how the universe started than you can with either by themselves, either religion off to its own or evolution off on its own.
Yeah.
And so you make a much stronger case. And I thought I can teach this in, basically it's a thought-provoking statement that I like to make. One of my heroes in science fiction was Isaac Asimov, and a long time ago, but his books were that way, thought-provoking science fiction. And you read it and you have the adventure and you have, the romance but on top of that, you've also got some really thought-provoking ideas that
Hmm.
that might be boring if you read them in a nonfiction textbook, but set in a science fiction
Right.
background, all of a sudden they become interesting, and you can see the point that's being made. So yeah, I try to make my science fiction thought-provoking, as well as exciting, where we have action happening and things going on.
I think it's interesting that they show up and they're not hiding somewhere. They're just right out there. They land. Everybody's there saying, "Hey, hi, how you doing?" They're not sneaking around and coming to see us in the middle of the night kind of thing. I like that.
Thank you.
But what's the conflict here in this book? And you say there's adventure.
So the aliens, and I know this is a kind of a well-used storyline, but the aliens land in the White House front lawn.
Okay.
And if you think about it, it's a logical place, much more logical than an Iowa farm field, where they say, okay, this is obviously the headquarters for the strongest government in the world. So we're going to land here and talk to the man that's in that White House. So when they get there, their mission is to figure out if they should give their technology, Promethean technology, to this planet. If Earthlings can be trusted with their technology, would Earth weaponize technology? Would they use it for evil, especially the faster than light technology? So they land there. They're explaining what they want to do, and then during the meeting, which is out on the White House lawn with press and people watching, they're attacked by a group of militants that think that these aliens are there to take over their world.
Oh, here we go.
And so they attack. They crawl over the fence around the White House, and they attack. And this group of people with this ideology that aliens are bad and they're here to take over our planet, they are the point of conflict with our good guys, the Prometheans. And then to help the Prometheans with their world tour, we have two majors who are Phil Casaverde, who's in charge of security, and Allison Huru is in charge of setting up meetings with leaders and that type of thing. So the conflict between that group of people, the two majors, and the 6 people that came from Promethea, and this group of terrorists who want to kill the threat. They don't believe that these people are doing what they say. So,
oh boy. And you wrap this up in one book? Could there be a sequel?
I don't know. A second story might be there somewhere. And I'm thinking about how that would go. I found in my life, in my reading, because I read a lot, that second and third installments of a book or a movie are often, worse than the original.
Right.
So I don't want to do that. So I'm thinking now about, okay, what would happen to our adventurers and to Earth? But you can read this book and be happy with it.
All right. Are you doing anything to promote it? Is that important to you? Locally,
I'm working with people I know. I just gave out 7 more books yesterday to a book club that's going to read my book. And so I haven't tried to get into a bookstore yet.
I'll tell you, book clubs are very popular. A lot of people are telling me that's how they're getting their book out there.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a couple more book clubs interested from people I know that are in them. Otherwise, we got a video that Fulton Books made to put on YouTube. And so we're going to wrap that up into Instagram accounts and my Facebook account, author account. So, yeah, I'm on a steep learning curve here.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you got the writing part down. Talk about your process.
I tend to have favorite writers, and I read their books to understand why they're my favorite writers. And so my process has been to kind of go through and like when I pick characters on this. I'm writing another book now, and one of my characters is my next door neighbor, because as I thought about this character, it's like, oh, this is Tim across the street. And so I even named him Tim so that I'd remember that. And I make sure that the character, when he says something, it would go along with his personality. The process, though, is to read it and realize this is a little vague, or this doesn't have a good twist to it. It's, kind of a boring sentence. And so trying to make it more explicit. So yeah, my process is to write, edit, and then write again, and expand the story. And I do believe, I'm reading right now Stephen King's book on writing, which I've wanted to read for a long time. But his thing was, pick something you know. If you know plumbing and you want to write a science fiction book, then write about a plumber on a spaceship, which I thought was interesting advice. And so as far as advice to other authors, that's where I'd say to start, is find that niche that you belong in, that you know, like I know something about chemistry and I know something, about different things. And then you put it together and you make not only something that's entertaining, but exciting, and people learn while they're reading your book, even though it's fiction. So yeah, that's what I try to do. I try to make it exciting, but thought-provoking at the same time.
Good advice. Thank you so much for talking to me today.
Yeah, thank you for the call and for your time today.
A former youth minister and director of religious education, Terese Neely Pottinger has had many jobs in her life. She worked at the San Diego water plant while she raised 2 of her 4 boys as a single mom. When she retired, she worked at libraries, all of which played a role, am I correct, in your decision to write Birth of a Jewel, Stories of Wisdom and Inspiration?
Oh, absolutely. The decision to write a book didn't happen until later, but I've always been a writer. That's how I could handle the situations that happened in my life, and I would always write them, and then I would put it away in a box. And so I had many stories of the experiences in my life. It's an inspiration and wisdom from what I learned in my life. There's 30 stories, and each story is something about my life and what has happened. It's been a tough life, but I have always worked at pulling the positive out of my life and out of what happens in my life. And people would always say, gosh, you're giving me a different perspective on this. You should write a book. And that was years ago. And I'm like, yeah, but I didn't. And then just about 3 years ago, I got an email about a website called medium.com. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Medium.com is a website where writers from all over the world and readers from all over the world come and read and write stories of all different genres you can think about. And then other people will respond on how their stories affected them or how they felt about them, and you could applaud. And I started reading on there, and I loved what I read, and the writers were very welcoming and very kind and very wise. And after a couple of months of reading it, I told my husband, you know what, I think I could write on here. And so I presented my first story called Cancer, a Positive Teacher. And I didn't think that anybody would really read it. I'm an introvert, who tries to be an extrovert. And so... but you have to, when you have to feed your kids, you have to get out there and you have to do the work to help feed the kids. So,
right.
That worked well for me, but I wasn't sure if people would be interested in what I had to say. Well, when I put that story out there, people and readers were coming in and responding. And they were thankful for the other perspective of how cancer can be a positive teacher and not a death sentence. And so when that worked, then I decided to write another and then another. So fast forward 2 years, I now have 60 stories on the Medium that I also voice most of them, where I read the stories. And in my book, Birth of a Jewel, some of the chapters are 1 page. That's it. And on the bottom of it, it has thoughts to ponder. And people who have read these books who are not on Medium, they have really appreciated the thoughts to ponder, because it gives them the opportunity to look at their own life and where changes could be made for their own experiences or different outlooks.
So how was cancer a positive teacher?
Well, when I found out that I had cancer, I was 28 years old, and this was back in the 80s. And it was growing inside me for 5 years before they found it.
What kind of cancer?
It was breast cancer. And I had small children at the time. And I was told by the doctor that they had done a mastectomy, and the lymph nodes were negative that they took out. They were random. But when I sat down with the doctor, he said, Terry, even though the lymph nodes were negative, we feel it's important that you go through radiation and chemo because it was growing inside you for 5 years. And women my age were dying with chemo and radiation with children. And I really went into a deep place to figure out if this is what I wanted to do. And I chose not to. I said, I choose not to do this. And he says, well, I wish you well. Fast forward 10 years. I ran into him at a hospital visiting a friend, and we were in the hall, and he looked at me like he saw a ghost. And I said, Doctor, and he's like, oh my God, Terese, you're here? And I said, yes. And you're well? And I said, yes. I said, you're looking at me like I'm a ghost? And he says, I think I am. So I told him, no, I was great and fine. So
Wow.
here, it's been over 30 plus years.
You're a lucky woman, man. You are very lucky.
Well, I look at it this way, Alice. Too many of us don't realize that we have a choice, and we do what we're told without going within and being quiet for a little bit and see if this really does align with you. And so when we do that, it takes on your body, your gut will let you know if it's okay. So when we know that we have choices, it changes the dynamics of the decision.
But to be clear, your book isn't about cancer. You share a lot of stories, right?
Yeah, like certain things that I went through, like giving up a child for adoption and didn't want to, and I was very young. And they've been some very challenging experiences, and there's pictures in there, which is wonderful because it brings, it just helps focus on the visual.
Right.
And they're wonderful ones. So, no, it's all positive. Sometimes you'll read it and start laughing. Other times you'll find yourself, tearing up. But all in all, it's just life and how we bring it together to live it. And I also, on every story, put a thought to ponder. They're on every single one of the jewel, of the birth of the jewel. Mm-hmm.
So as we all know, the most challenging part is going out and, selling your book, basically. How was that for you?
Yeah, Alice, it was tough because, like I said, I'm introverted. And when I went to Barnes & Noble and I had everything set up, it was wonderful. And the manager comes over and says, yeah, so all you have to do is kind of interact with people. But what I found was when we try to push, oh, hi, how are you? Here, have a bookmark. And I don't sell like that. I liked it when people came, because some people would walk in the door, they'd see me and look the other way, so you don't go after them, you just do. But I went to a couple of local stores here in our town, and I said, hey, I've just written a book, and I'd be honored if you'd like to read it and see if maybe you could put it in your store. And they were so kind, but I didn't push it. If they said no, fine. If they said yes, yes. One store said, well, we have a group that reads them and then they'll decide. And I'm like, that's fine. Then they called and said, yes, we would like to put it out.
And you've gotten some book signings as a result.
Oh, yeah, I did over at Barnes & Noble, and also at the library in my hometown where I did a talk, and 30 people came and sat, and then they came up and asked for if I would sign their books for them.
Oh, nice. That had to feel so good.
It felt amazing. It was like, oh my gosh, I'm actually an author. This is amazing. I was thinking that. I was like, oh my gosh, they're so validating and so kind. So, yeah.
And more books to come.
As of right now, like I said, on medium.com, I have 60. So I'm pulling the other 30, 30. I'm going through those. And within the next year, there will be another book.
All right. Thank you so much, Terese.
Oh,
I appreciate it.
anytime, Alice. Thank you.
A Marine for 30 years, Michael Hensley writes when he's traveling for work or when he's traveling with his family. And his first published children's book, entitled A Boy Named Mike, was actually inspired by things he overheard during these travels. Explain.
As I've traveled around and as I listen to people talk, often the message to kids today is how you grow up determines how you're going to make it in life. Like your future is being determined for you. So for me, what inspired me to write it was I know that there's lots of individuals that come from being poor, from bad backgrounds, not good childhoods, and I was like, my childhood wasn't bad, but I grew up poor, right? So I was like, I want people to know, I want kids to know that as they grow up, that they have the ability to make decisions that can impact their life, and that ultimately they have the ability to alter the directions of where they may be expected to go, and they have the ability to determine their future, that no one can define that for them, but they have the ability to determine that as they grow up.
Do you have children?
I do. So I have 6.
6.
Yep. 3 are in college and 3 are in the service.
That's an achievement right there, wouldn't you say?
It is. And, having 6 kids and 2 fur babies, 1 fur baby now because the other one passed away, is great joy. And now there's also a grandbaby in the mix now. So we do have a grandbaby now, too.
Did you talk to your kids about how you grew up?
I did talk to them and tell them, about some of the struggles, not just me, but like that other people face. And I would use examples of, like, we sponsor a kid in Uganda, and it's $37 a month, and that provides food for the child and the entire family. Right. So I would use those kind of examples, like how I grew up, and I would always emphasize to them that one advantage that we all have is that we're growing up in America, and there are lots of opportunities and lots of programs and things that help take care of us as people. And that was what I would emphasize to them, is that, hey, we're lucky that we live here and that we're growing up here and that you grow up here, because there's lots of opportunities that a lot of other people in other countries don't have.
So, this has always been with you your entire life. What made you say, you know what, I'm going to write this story and I'm going to get it published?
So I'm all about challenging myself and doing. I'm all about challenging myself and doing things that can demonstrate to others that to never stop challenging yourself. So when I came upon the thought process to do this, I told my wife and my daughter, we were in our kitchen, and I said, you know what, I'm going to write a kid's book. And they said, oh, okay. And then 6 months later, I said, hey, here's my initial manuscript. What do you think about it? And they're like, well, that's really good. And then I started the reaching out publishing process. And one thing that kind of really helped me kind of make that final determination was I was ready to do it, but then I had a friend who published an adult book, and I was talking to him about it, and he was like, oh, by the way, I just sent your information to Nicole at Page Publishing, and she's going to be reaching out to you because I think you should go and do it because I like your story. So he helped me along a little bit too.
Oh, so he's the one that motivated you. You didn't really have a choice. He did it for you.
Yeah, he kind of helped a little bit. Yeah.
Well, that's always helpful. I bet there's a lot of people out there who wish they had a friend like that.
Yes. Yeah. So I was thinking about it, and then he just kind of helped. He was like, "Hey, I want to help you get that little extra nudge."
A little help from a friend never hurts.
Yes.
Are you going to keep writing?
Yes. I actually have one that's already been one that's been submitted to Page Publishing and is approved. I've just got to sign the contract. And then 2 more that I'm working on. I'm going to submit soon to Page Publishing for review and to see if they get approved for publishing. They will all fall under A Boy Named Mike title. Okay. But it'd be like A Boy Named Mike, goes or whatever, A Boy Named Mike gets. So they'll all be, it'll be a kind of a series of books that I'm working on for a boy named Mike.
That's great. So we're gonna hear about a lot of your experiences as a kid.
Yes, everything from from going to church, spending the night, visiting grandparents or mom and papa, because that's what I call them growing up.
Yeah.
And getting saved to eventually I hope to make one that says a boy named Mike joins the Marine Corps, and then maybe transition to more maybe more of an adult type or older individual type book after that.
Great. So now you're on a roll. You're ready.
It's once the initial one was done and the process went, from submission to publishing was probably about 8 months or so.
Right.
But it was worth it. And then in that meantime, then you get motivation to start making more. And it's not about the money, because it's not, you don't really make that much. It's to me, like I said earlier, it's about setting the example and demonstrating to others that, hey, don't ever be afraid to challenge yourself, because when you challenge yourself, you excel, and you learn that usually the only one that limits ourselves is us.
That's true. That's very true. Any ideas on promoting the book for our listeners?
I am working with 2 people that I know that are like middle school and elementary school teachers. So we're working with 2 individuals to try to go there, and not, there's no money or anything involved, but it's just to go talk to the kids, read the book, and hopefully take some copies with us that we can hand out.
That's great. And you never know who might buy one as a result, right?
Yes.
All right. Mike, so glad I caught up with you.
Well, thank you very much, and you have a great day.
You too. Sheri Palmer has been getting signs throughout her entire life that writing is in her blood. And finally, she got the opportunity to publish her first book, Sparkplug, an endearing story.
Oh, gosh, back way when I was in school, first, second grade, my English teacher was encouraging me to write poetry. And so that's what I started writing, was poetry. And I got pretty good at it, I thought. Anyway, all the way through school, I did so good in English that I just, everyone told me they loved to read my letters that I wrote them. And they just said, keep writing, Sheri. I love to hear your letters. Keep writing to me, and on all through my life I wrote. But I didn't pursue writing until my children grew up and I was alone in the house, and I had the bakery business, but I still would start writing stories for children, reminiscing about my own children's lives. So.
But this was the book that you published, the book about your grandfather's dog.
Yes.
Why this book?
He was all of ours dog. I mean, I'm thinking that he accepted this dog only because us kids loved it so much when the man first brought the dog. Why is because I believe that this story could make a good cartoon or a nice family movie. I think it's got the potential to be a modern day Lassie type. Lassie run away from home a lot, but it always helped people. It knew when to help somebody. And my spark plug he never run away or anything. He was always on the farm. But the people who came to the farm, like there's a story in the book about the mailman saved his life probably. And different times he saved our lives, and different times he saved my grandfather's life. He just seemed to have a knower about danger. So I thought I'd make a good movie someday. I've gotten a few reviews already because it's been on the market for a few months. And the reviews are very good. I even had a 12-year-old read it. And that's not my target. My target was 0 to 6 or 0, right in there.
Yeah.
But a 12-year-old left me a review and said that he loved the book and he wished he had a dog like Sparkplug.
Aw.
It was so cute. Yeah, it was really cute.
I think it's interesting how the story begins. Your grandfather lost his dog, right?
We did.
His farm dog.
Yeah.
And how did he come upon Sparkplug?
The man who run over our dog, he accidentally hit the dog. Felt so bad about the dog. And the farm it was a small town, and everyone knew the Wheelers, everyone knew the farm, and everyone knew my grandfather and my grandmother, and they knew he was raising his grandchildren. And so they knew when they heard that the dog was killed, the man knew about it already. So he already knew that people were talking. And he felt so bad that he brought one of his own that he raised, a Rottweiler.
Which, like pit bulls, have terrible reputations.
So did the Rottweilers. And he kept telling my grandfather that these dogs are probably the best dogs you could have for a child's dog, a pet. My grandfather needed a guard dog, a herding dog, plus he wanted a pet for us kids.
Yeah.
So he was leaning toward more of a different breed, not a Rottweiler. And the Rottweiler, he was afraid people would have an attitude about coming to the farm, being afraid. He didn't want people afraid of his dog, of course.
Yeah.
Anyway, this man was telling him all the good things about this dog. And he also told him that he has bred this one special because he was going to keep this dog as his own breeder. So he took the best of his breeding bunch and mated them. And so this dog was extra smart, extra special. He said, I hate to part with this, but I feel so bad that I've killed, I didn't put that in the book. I didn't say the man killed the dog. But
well, how do you start?
That's the way it went.
Yeah. How do you start the book? Just that Grandpa lost his dog and he was looking for another one, right? It's a children's book.
It's a children's book. So I just put, because of the loss of the dog, a man brought another dog to replace him, but it was a Rottweiler. These dogs, even back then, were like $1,000 to $1,500 to buy a special bred dog like that. And he didn't want any money for it. But in the long run, Grandpa offered him the money. He really got his money's worth. So he was going to pay him, but the man wouldn't take the money. Mm. There's a lot of lessons in the book. And I think the biggest lesson would be love never fails. You can do anything. You can make something evil turn into something good. You can turn it around. And there was more morals in that. The love this dog had for everyone.
Yeah.
The right decisions that dog always made. It's good to make right decisions. You always get rewarded. Children, if they make right decisions, are going to get rewarded.
What's the most significant decision this dog made?
When we first brought him in the house that night that he came to the house, he immediately went over to the potbelly stove in the kitchen and laid down. He just seemed to know he belonged there. And he never left that spot. He didn't roam through the house. He didn't jump on furniture. He didn't climb in bed with us. That was his spot, and he stayed there forever. I mean, every time he was in the house, that's the first decision right there that I thought, this is an unusual dog.
Yeah. Now, are there more stories about Sparkplug that you're going to be sharing down the road?
I have a second edition out right now because the word limit and the page number on a child's picture book is limited. So I had to break his story into 2 books.
Okay.
So, yeah, I probably could make a series out of him, but I'm just going to leave it at the 2 right now.
Okay.
I'd like to go on and make another book for the cat people that like cats.
A lot of people like cats.
They do, don't they? I like cats.
Yeah. Are you doing anything to promote the book?
I've been putting it out on the websites.
Okay.
My personal websites, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. It's all out there, and it's been out there. Like I said, I'm getting reviews, so I know it's out there.
How did it feel to get that book in the mail?
Oh, my gosh. That was a moment for me personally. The amazing job that Fulton Publishing did is amazing. It was, and my first thought was, oh, these kids are going to love this book. It's a cute book, just to look at the cover. I was very, very happy.
Great. All right. Well, listen, good luck with both books.
Thanks, Alice.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. We hope to see you back here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.